Matter of fact, I'm just getting up saying what you said, boy. You know you ain't on nothing. You ain't on nothing. We been laying law down on your bitch ass. You know what's up. You been coming back, getting out of jail, trying to apologize. You ain't on nothing, nigga. You was a hoe. You a pretty bitch. You ain't gonna do shit when you see a nigga. Ain't gonna do nothing. Stop acting, nigga. You got the internet, fool. You do not have me, fool. I don't give a fuck. You know what's up. I know what's up with you, nigga. You know I know. So stop playing, sis ass nigga. Go make some music, crab ass nigga. I ain't never getting on this motherfucker crying about a deal or whatever. I don't give a fuck, nigga. I'm gonna go get it out the streets. You bitch. You a big bitch.
The beef between Finesse2tymes and Big Homie G is getting deadly, not because of a song, not because of a subliminal, but because of something Finesse said publicly about Big Homie G that cuts straight to the heart of street credibility, an accusation that people in Memphis rap recognize immediately as one of the most serious things you can put on another man's name. Finesse2tymes, born Ricky Hampton, is one of Memphis rap's most compelling comeback stories. Back in 2012, he ran with a collective called Memphis Greatest Underrated alongside Moneybagg Yo and Black Youngsta, young men from the same city building something together from the ground up. But his path took a hard detour. He served over 3 years on a 5-year federal sentence for illegal firearm possession, tied to convictions including aggravated robbery and a nightclub shooting in Arkansas. He came home in 2022 and came out swinging. His single Back End hit the Billboard Hot 100, and it felt like his moment had finally arrived. Big Homie G occupies a different lane, but an equally important one, known as a hard-nosed, no-nonsense voice with the streets fully behind him. Here's the detail that makes him central to this story beyond music. He's Moneybagg Yo's cousin, which placed him inside the Bread Gang circle when that label officially launched around Grammy weekend in 2023, alongside YTB Fat, Finesse2tymes, and Big 30. At one point, both Finesse and Big Homie G stood under the same banner, connected through the same man. To understand what happened next, you need the Finesse and Moneybagg history. These two go back to those early MGU days, but by 2017, they were publicly feuding. Then Finesse went to prison, and when he came home 5 years later, something remarkable happened. He squashed it. In September 2022, the two publicly reconciled, and Finesse signed to Moneybagg's Bread Gang label in a joint venture with Atlantic Records. They even dropped a record together, Black Visa. From the outside, it looked like a genuine redemption story, but the alliance didn't hold. Whatever happened behind closed doors, the public version came through Finesse's own words. A man who felt abandoned, blocked, and set up to fail by the people he just reconciled with. He began saying Moneybagg Yo had distanced himself once the initial excitement faded, that the resources promised with the deal never materialized, and that Bagg was actively using his industry relationships to close doors Finesse needed open. These were stunning allegations to level at a man who'd become one of Memphis rap's most respected figures, not just as an artist, but as a boss modeling the executive lane Yo Gotti had built through CMG. And because Big Homie G was family, once Finesse started airing grievances about the Bread Gang camp, G became impossible to separate from the story. Then came the accusation that changed everything. In January 2026, Finesse was arrested in East Texas on drug-related charges. His girlfriend, FNG Sugar, had been arrested the day before on similar charges. After making bail, Finesse went straight to Instagram and said Moneybagg Yo had something to do with the police involvement. "Bagg put the police on me," he wrote. Then he went further, turning his attention to Big Homie G directly, claiming G's name had shown up in legal paperwork and that the Bread Gang camp had swept it under the rug. He was accusing Moneybagg Yo of standing next to someone with a documented history of cooperating with law enforcement while publicly preaching loyalty and street credibility. Here's why this specific kind of accusation operates on a completely different level than anything else that gets said in a rap beef. In the culture these men come from, being labeled a snitch isn't just an insult, it's an accusation with life-altering, potentially life-threatening consequences. It can destroy relationships overnight and make a person a target, and the streets don't operate on innocent until proven guilty. The moment paperwork gets mentioned publicly, the damage begins immediately, regardless of what any actual document says. Big Homie G had built a reputation deeply tied to authenticity. Having that suddenly put in question by a public accusation wasn't something he could just laugh off. He didn't. He came back through his own platforms with directness, rejecting the allegations completely, calling Finesse out for spreading what he described as dangerous lies, and making clear this wasn't something he'd absorb quietly. What made his response land differently than a typical clapback was the tone. Not an artist defending bars or streaming numbers, but a man talking about his name in the streets and what it means when someone publicly connects you to cooperating with law enforcement in a city like Memphis. He warned Finesse directly that continuing to push these claims wouldn't end without consequences. But the feud didn't stop there. Rather than pull back, Finesse kept the pressure on through interviews and live streams, revisiting the accusations and adding new layers. He expanded the narrative to paint the entire Bread Gang circle as having conspired against his career, claiming industry connections and deals had been deliberately blocked. He even alleged that a potential deal involving Yo Gotti and CMG had been interfered with by Moneybagg Yo and Big Boogie, who he claimed feared what he could do with real label resources behind him. What started as a personal grudge had become, in Finesse's framing, a story about business, money, and career survival. None of this exists in a vacuum. Memphis has one of hip-hop's most storied and complicated histories, where the line between rap beef and real-world danger has always been uncomfortably thin. From 36 Mafia to Young Dolph, whose murder in 2021 permanently changed how people watch conflicts like this. Dolph was shot and killed in a cookie shop not far from where he grew up, at the height of his career, and that loss reminded an entire genre that these tensions aren't hypothetical. That history is exactly why so many people are watching Finesse and Big Homie G with real unease rather than typical hip-hop entertainment. Public accusations of cooperating with law enforcement, credibility challenges in an environment where credibility is tied to physical safety, and a city that's seen exactly how this can end. Finesse's own legal situation only adds to the volatility. By early 2026, he'd been arrested multiple times in a short span, including an earlier Dallas area arrest on drug charges and a felony evidence tampering charge, plus a period back in federal custody over alleged supervised release violations his attorney denied. Everything he's saying publicly is happening against the backdrop of a man fighting legal battles on multiple fronts, which means his words are landing with extra weight and getting amplified constantly by blogs, reaction channels, and commentators feeding an ecosystem that keeps every development alive. This is also what separates this from a typical rap rivalry. Traditional beef, even the biggest ones, like Drake and Kendrick, lives and dies on wax, settled through bars and streaming numbers. What's happening here isn't about who raps better. It's about who allegedly told on who, whether someone's credibility in the streets is real, whether a powerful person used law enforcement as a weapon against a former ally. Those aren't questions a diss track can resolve. And historically, when Memphis rappers get forced to respond in that space, instead of the studio, the consequences have been severe. Fan reactions have split predictably. One camp sees Finesse as a man repeatedly wronged. Someone who came home from prison, humbled himself enough to squash an old beef, signed with the man he'd had problems with, and then watched that same circle close doors instead of opening them. To them, he's not out of control. He's out of options, saying what he knows so nobody can pretend they didn't hear it. The other camp points to his pattern of public confrontations across this same period, with Offset, with Bone Thugs, with G Herbo and Ari Fletcher, and sees the G allegations as less like careful truth-telling and more like a man in chaos throwing everything at the wall. And then there's a third group just watching, hoping this finds a resolution before it finds a tragedy. Right now, both men remain publicly opposed. The paperwork allegations are still circulating every time a new interview drops. Big Homie G hasn't backed down from his rejection of them. Moneybagg Yo has largely stayed quiet, which has only fed more speculation about what that silence means. And Finesse continues being Finesse, loud, unfiltered, willing to say things publicly that most people in his position would keep private. What you're really looking at isn't about one moment or one accusation. It's years of damaged relationships, a comeback that never fully delivered what was promised, and a man who came home ready to collect what he felt he was owed, only to find doors closing instead. The paperwork allegations are the loudest part of the story right now, but they're built on a foundation that was already cracking long before that January Instagram post. Because a person who was once inside your circle knows things about you strangers never could. And the transition from ally to adversary is always the most dangerous distance in this game. What are your thoughts on how this plays out? Drop it in the comments below.